Thank you, Dr. Reed. My name is Andy Coop, as Dr. Reed said, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Shannon Tucker, the Assistant Dean of Instructional Design and Technology. I must just, though, before we start, say that when we submitted this abstract, there were 11 authors on this abstract, and that is a significant underestimation of the number of people who were involved in this project. And this involved basically the entire school of pharmacy. So we want to give a hybrid healthcare curriculum schedule that promotes wellness and avoids Zoom fatigue. And for an introduction, I'd like to hand over to my partner in crime, Shannon.
Hi there. So to start off, our objective in this talk, is really to balance, we talked about it before, taking a student-centered approach. And, during the pandemic, the virtual delivery of our didactic education, we've seen nationally a big shift from in-person learning to online, and sort of seen the opportunities for what the future is for student learning. But, being online in this environment all day, as our students would have been in the classroom, that has emerged as a huge issue over the last 18 months. So this session, we're focusing on an approach that we have implemented at the school with a big team of people to incorporate limiting sort of synchronous and online activities at regular times across courses in a class year to really address student wellness concerns. So, this idea of Zoom fatigue has been in the national news, really since the March shift to virtual emergency remote instruction. And it really involves the exhaustion with overuse of virtual platforms. So, taking our curriculum in March from, our Doctor of Pharmacy program in person to online, certainly Andy and I have experienced, we're online all day, every day. So we just wanted to ask, our community here, how has your well-being been impacted by Zoom fatigue during the last academic year? We have a little happy face scale here, so you can connect to the poll by going to pollev.com/rxumsop and just click on that. We'll just give you a few minutes. Dr. Coop, so, in the initial shift to online, thinking about our office and what we've heard from our colleagues and students, we're seeing, some different, a few responses coming in. How have you been impacted by Zoom fatigue?
Talk to me, Shannon?
Yes.
Oof. I don't have time to worry about it.
So we really have, a broad spectrum, some faring better than others, and if we've seen that spectrum. So sort of shifting over, Dr. Coop, in spring 2020, it's hard to believe, that's a year ago. Can you talk about the problem that we saw?
So the problem, and this is well documented in the literature, is that Zoom uses a lot of cognitive energy because it violates so many social norms. And the violation of so many social norms, yet academic classes traditionally are scheduled all day. So there has been a significant amount of literature, especially over the last year, about how to limit Zoom fatigue. Both by the recipient, the student, and also us, and things like take breaks, get away from the computer. Also, though, by the presenter in terms of presenting, in our case, to students. And this includes things like Make sure your talks are short. The previous speaker spoke about short talks. Take many breaks, even within a session. Make the sessions. Break things up, like do this poll, like Shannon just did. But one thing I've not read that's really important is don't go over your time. And that's because this is very individual for the individual faculty within their individual class. Thinking about don't go over your time is because the student doesn't have a break before the next class. We're thinking curriculum as a whole there. And faculty, yes, we think about the student experience, but we don't as well at the same time because we're not students. So that really got us thinking. You know, when we did this pivot, can you move on to the next one, please, Shannon? When we did this pivot back in the, can you not move forward, Shannon?
There we go.
Oh, there you go. When we did the pivot, what we found, we just basically, you know, ran the classes all day, etc. And everyone, absolutely everyone showed the negative feedback. Everyone was overwhelmed. The live sessions were not at regular times. There was like all day long. Coupled with this fact that we need to think about it holistically, not just at the class level. What this led us to come to the conclusion here at the school was that we needed a student-centered approach coordinated across the whole curriculum in pharmacy school. So this is all the courses, so that we had scheduling limited to set times of the day, a maximum number of hours a day across the entire curriculum. So I'm going to hand it over to Shannon to show what the curriculum looked like, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we actually did this.
So Dr. Coop talked about our prior schedules. So in spring 2020, we maintained our schedule. If you were in person, expected to be in a classroom, then we're online in WebEx or Zoom. So that really duplicated what our in-person experience is. And, you know, that created stress. We had students who moved into different time zones, having to take an 8:30 exam at, let's say, 5:30 in the morning. So, you know, at the end of our spring 2020 semester, in our student affairs office and academic affairs, we conducted some focus groups. There were many surveys that went out that really documented what Dr. Coop talked about in terms of that impact, transitioning from, you know, that day-to-day environment online. So here, what we came up with as a result was to try and come up with some kind of consistency, because that was something that our students struggled with, having to, you know, keep track of schedules and time zones and where they needed to be online without any predictability. So what we arrived at was, you know, dedicated times. So you'll see here that our day did not start until 10 a.m. And that was intentional because we had students who moved back to the West Coast and trying to, we had parents, you know, dealing with the shift to K-12 in an online environment. So trying to come up with something that, you know, balanced these other well-being concerns of, you know, our community. So here you'll see we have, this is an example first year doctor of pharmacy schedule, and we have our exam/student experience time on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, a break or dedicated time for administrative meetings, time for class advisors to hold to be able to meet consistently with their students. Previously in our in-person schedule, we dedicated time for student organizations to meet. So we maintained that time and, you know, included break time for students. And then you'll see here, we have about 2 hours of synchronous class time, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for their didactic classes. And then you'll see here, we've maintained our lab structure. We have an in-person skills lab each semester in this curriculum. So this maintains small group activities for them. Also in this, around the schedule, we incorporated blocks for office hours should faculty need those. You know, of course, working with students, they could schedule these at other times, but this was really convenience to ensure that, you know, course managers did not have to search the schedule and sort of see what was going on there. So, Andy, you know, this really provided a structure to the schedule, but there was a whole other piece that was implemented to make this happen.
Because faculty were used to synchronous in person. So this led to significant number of meetings to limit the number of synchronous time, which included therefore re-education of the faculty in terms of development and re-education on moving to using asynchronous delivery methods to supplement these synchronous methods, but also to use these synchronous methods really for valuable experiences for the student. So this was a change in terms of the way we thought about things, and it needed much. So we actually assigned instructional designers and individuals with instructional design expertise so that every single course had their dedicated instructional designer. Because each instructional designer did many courses, but each course had a person to go to that was there. We also scheduled regular, and I mean regular, course manager meetings, the course coordinator, whatever you'd call them, meetings. Again, to get information, to share communication, but again, it was also to think holistically about the curriculum, not just about your course, but to think about how all the courses, so the whole student experience, which is very different to the faculty experience. So that was another way in which we helped the development of the faculty. Could I have the next slide, please, Shannon?
Sure. I think one of the other things before we move on, there was also coordinated technology support in terms of the transition as well, because, you know, moving into this environment, there are many new technologies that faculty and instructors were using.
But with this increase in asynchronous activities, one of the concerns by students is now it's just way too much stuff. You've added stuff, and you've added me doing an assignment, you've added me doing an essay. This takes way longer than when we used to do class time. Now, this is a valid argument, a valid criticism. And how do we respond to that? So this is one of the things that we implemented, that we will definitely carry this on into the future, is to actually ensure that we accurately measure credit hours through Carnegie units to include everything. So, and we made sure, and in fact, one of the things we did, we ensured that these calculators are actually submitted with syllabi to the curriculum committee so that we ensure that the workload for the student workload does meet the Carnegie credit unit. So back in the old days, 15 hours was a credit. Well, when you have asynchronous activities, how long does an essay take to write? Do we need to take into account studying for an exam? The Carnegie unit takes into account all activities associated with the course. So this even includes studying for an exam, which traditionally we didn't think about, at least at this school, many of us anyway. So if we move on to the next slide, Shannon, you can see the workload calculator that we borrowed. I mean, we really have borrowed this from others. It's not our idea. And you can see on this that you put in like the reading assignments, pages per week, page density. So this way you can really calculate how many hours a week the student will be spending on all the activities, stuff in that course. Now, from the workload estimator, you get the number of hours a week within that course, and this is of everything. So this isn't like 15 hours of lecture, this is everything. And on the next slide is a wonderful little table. I think it's on the next table, Shannon. Okay, so this is how you actually, from those hours. So for instance, this is maximum number of hours. So for a 1 credit course, over 15 is 45 hours of everything, activities completely within everything to do with the course. 2 credit is 90 hours and 3 credits 135 hours. And if your courses are split into say A and Bs or even 3 a semester, this shows the number of hours a week. But the important thing here is actually the fact that this calculates the number of hours and gives us a wonderful way of ensuring that the student activities with the asynchronous and the synchronous actually are not bloated, which is obviously incredibly important in terms of wellness for the students. Do you want me to continue sharing, Shannon?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. 1 sec. So this is all good, but did it actually work? Well, you know, the assessment was that we did a quick assessment for the amount of synchronous time in terms of like how much synchronous time is there within the course compared to asynchronous. It was well received by students, less well by faculty. Most faculty would have liked a little more synchronous time. Length of the synchronous windows, at least by students and by faculty, was well received, and that was one of the main things. We received similar results for time of the windows, early afternoon. They did not like mornings. And time of exams that we set at 10 a.m., always at 10 a.m., the same results. They were well received with these times. So early afternoon was fine, but I think the time wasn't important. I think it was the consistency of the time that actually came, but they definitely liked that. So the conclusions, the regular limited synchronous sessions allowed a regular schedule. Feedback, they did like it. It needed a lot of collaboration by a lot of individuals. Instructional designers was critical. One thing we found was that the students need a guidebook for the asynchronous activities. You really need to give them a guide for what to get done when. Many students can structure their own time, but there are many others who cannot. So you really need to provide dates to actually get things done. And thank you. And we just wanted to open it for questions. And what is the biggest obstacle to implementing at your school, or any feedback for us?